If you've ever wondered why people use electric secateurs for pruning, you've probably never done it for a living. This week I am super excited. I get to play around with not one, but 3 different kinds of electric secateurs. I put them through their paces on your vineyard and an orchard. One of the models is very firmly a consumer-based model and it's very cheap. The other 2 are more professional style, and I'm sure you'll find it fascinating, the different capabilities of each of these secateurs. As always guys, if you like this sort of video, please hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and check out plenty more content on timthompson.ag. Alrighty, let's have a look at what you get in the box with each. First up is the Ryobi. Pretty simple. Instructions, bit of packaging, and some really nice looking $130 secateurs. Take the plastic wrap off, and they're not ready to go because they don't come with a battery. Obviously you buy these as a skin. And now the Bahco. Let's have a look at what you can get in the box. Nice squishy foam box. Makes it really good for people like me. Once again, you get some instructions. You'll probably need to read them. There's a lot of options on these. You get a couple of tools that help you maintain them, and you get straight out of the box, ready to go, a couple of batteries, paste, put a sticker on the back side. That makes changing them real easy. You also get a charger, and you get numerous different adapters for various countries. That's about it. And finally, we've got the big daddy, the Felcos. Now they come in their own plastic box, which is lovely. And if you really enjoy instructions, you're going to love the Felcos. I do suggest you read them. You get a holster to put on your belt. Now that'll look fantastic when you're going in the street for lunch. You get a battery pack. Now in this battery pack is not only a battery, but the controller as well. Because the battery is really large, it will last you the whole day, but because of that, it's also really heavy, hence the padded backpack that you get with it. You're also going to get, of course, a charger. Now that'll charge up that battery in an hour or so. And then there's a cable which attaches permanently to your handset. That's an advantage in that it does keep the handset a little bit lighter, but it's a disadvantage in that you've got this cable always running around from the front of your body to your back, and it can get caught up in trees. We'll talk about that in a minute. You also get some spray, you get a spare blade, you get a spare blade adjustment kit, and you get another tool. Alright, let's go try them out. Once you get a battery organised for your Ryobis, operating them's really simple. Hold the trigger for 3 seconds to turn them on, and they open. Close the trigger for 3 seconds, and they turn back off again. Operating the Bahcos starts out just as simple. Put a battery into the base, and then there's a button to turn them on. Hit the trigger twice, and then if you hold the trigger closed, it actually changes the amount that the jaws will open. Now this is a really handy feature because you don't always want to be making big cuts, and by having the jaws only open halfway, this makes the secateurs much faster. And for commercial operation, this is a really good feature to have. The battery should last 2 to 3 hours of cutting, and to turn them off, just press the red button again. Oh, and when you first turn them on, there's a cycle indicator to help you keep on track of servicing. The Felcos are a bit different. They've got a funky little switch on the cord that turns them on or off. And that's about it. Damn, they are fast though. And having proportional control on the secateurs means that the amount that you pull the trigger governs the amount that the jaws close. Now that might sound really logical, but on the cheaper Ryobi set, it's either turn on or turn off. Having the proportional control on both the Bahcos and the Felcos makes them a lot easier to use, particularly around wires. So let's try them out in the orchard. We've got the 2 professionals, the Felco and the Bahco, and then we've got our cheapy consumer model, the Ryobis. Let's put them through their paces on the trees and see which one stacks up best working in an orchard. Having the blade gap adjustment on the Bahcos was fantastic in the orchard. It meant that when you had a lot of small cuts to do, you could close down the blade gap and rip through the cutting with a really fast action. But it also meant when you came up across something that was really big, you could open those blades up again in a matter of seconds and basically do away with the need to carry a pair of loppers. Now, it's probably worth pointing out that while the Bahco and the Ryobi models are brand new, the Felco has a few years under its belt, and there is a new model that does have an upgraded battery available. But it's still holding its own pretty well. One thing I'll point out with the Felcos, and that is that the lead, if you're not careful when you're working in an orchard, can get caught up in the trees. I know they tell you you should bring it over your shoulder, you should attach it to the harness, but it's just an extra thing to think about that the other two pairs of Secateurs don't have. These do make up for it though in being faster in their action, so you can actually skip through quicker, but the jaws don't open quite as wide, careful with your fingers, as the Bahcos. So in an orchard also, when you've got larger pieces of wood to cut, these will find their limit quicker than the Bahcos will. I've got to be honest with you, in the orchard, the Felcos, this cable, it's a distinct disadvantage when you've got to wrestle your way through trees. I'm sure it would be fine on trellis trees, which a lot of systems are going towards now, but it is something to think about. And I know you're supposed to have it over your shoulder, but it's annoying. Next up's the Ryobi. And I've got to be honest with you, compared to the last couple of Secateurs that we've tried out, the professional models, this is kind of like going to breakfast with your drunk mate on a Sunday. It's slow, and he's sort of like, oh, really? Do I have to do it? But I tell you what, if I hadn't have used the professional models and seen the speed of the professional models, I'd probably still be pretty impressed with these, to be honest. With the 2.5 milliamp battery, it's got fairly good balance. It's quite light. The jaws open wide enough to go through quite considerably large diameter material, and it bogs down a little bit more, but it still gets through it. For the hobbyist and someone at home that's got 20 trees, these are fantastic. With the larger cuts, you don't have the adjustability of the Bahcos, and you don't have the strength of the Felcos, but it gets there in the end. One of the other things that I'll mention about this is that there's no proportional trigger. On the professional machines, if you pull the trigger in halfway, the blade goes in halfway. With this, it really is just an on-off button. You can stop it halfway by taking your finger off the trigger, but it automatically goes straight back. This, I think, is probably a safety feature compared with the very slow rate of articulation of the blade. Puts these Secateurs firmly in the home hobbyist and handyman category. But if you've only got an hour or two of work to do, and you can put up with the slow speed, they're not bad. Well, I think the summary can be in. Felcos suffered a little bit from having the cord over your shoulder and fouling on the trees, and they also had trouble in the orchard with some of the larger branches getting the jaws around the branch. For my money, the winner in the orchard, by a margin, is the Bahcos. They've got the same strength and power as the Felcos. They're a little bit slower, but in an orchard, you're not making as many cuts as quick anyway. And they've got those extra wide jaws that just let you slice through extra large branches like a knife through butter. These guys, not bad, but a bit slow. And I will point out, they actually heated up in my hand quite a bit while I was using them too. If you've only got a few trees though, I wouldn't hesitate. Now, the value of electric secateurs quickly becomes apparent when you go into a larger vineyard or an orchard and you compare the tools that I sort of started out with, which was a pair of loppers, a pair of secateurs. The workflow of these tools is just so much more complicated compared to a pair of electric secateurs, which can do the work of both and not require you to carry them and swap over constantly during the job. And when you're pruning and wrapping down up to 2,500 vines a hectare, or about 1,000 vines an acre with modern pruning systems, any small advantage that you can get in terms of workflow efficiency is going to end up being hours of your time and potentially stopping long-term use injuries like this one here. So let's go and have a look at how the 3 different electric secateurs perform cane pruning in the vineyard. Once again, the Ryobis did everything at a leisurely pace, but for the hobbyist, they got through most of the cane material on the vines without too much of a drama, and for $130, I don't see how you could go wrong if you've only got a couple of rows. One thing I did notice was that the bulky body got in the way when it came to cutting the canes off the wires. They were a little bit more tricky to use. The Bahcos shone again with their adjustability of jaw width. You could handle the large cuts really easily, but you could also trim these guys down to go super fast and keep up with most people working in the vineyard. These would be an excellent pair of secateurs for someone working on a vineyard every day of the week. The Felcos shone in the vineyard because their really slim jaws and their fast speed made them ideal for cutting canes off wires and for getting into the tricky and difficult parts of crowns where you need to be flexible. Having the cable wasn't so much of a disadvantage in the vineyard because with the trellising system there were no canes to get it stuck on. The holster was also surprisingly good because if it came time to work on the vines, you could throw the secateurs into the holster and free up both hands. Just bear in mind, the Felcos are nearly 2.5 times the price of the Bahcos. And hey, while I've got your attention, just a quick short note on safety. Please make sure you keep your offhand in your pocket at all times. Don't be tempted to grab stuff you're cutting or pull stuff you're cutting out while these things are going, because they will take your finger off just as quick as look at it. The other thing I always suggest is a good set of speed dealers. Keep your eyes safe. If you're only a small hobby farmer or homesteader and you've just got a few trees or a few vines and you're on a limited budget, these things are a no-brainer. They're going to make your job easier for you and they're going to make it pleasurable to be out and about in the yard. Not only that, but you can use this battery in other consumer grade tools. If you've got about $1,100 to spare and you're professional, you've got an orchard or a vineyard of reasonable size, then these things here are well worth considering. The batteries will last 2 or 3 hours at a pop. You'll get thousands of cycles out of them. They're fully demountable. You can replace all the parts. They're easy to get, they're easy to access, easy to service. These are a ripper little tool. If you've got $2.5 grand to spare and you're working in a vineyard, or you're working with particularly tight, fiddly little spaces, then the narrower anvil and the quicker action of the Felcos might be a slight advantage for you, particularly if you're being paid on a piece rate. Once again, a professional model, lots of steel involved in the construction, can easily be pulled apart, serviced, and a long-lasting battery that you'll get 8 hours out of without needing to charge. Also, I'm led to believe you can get a foot pairing headset for these, and you can actually use them on animals. Frightening thought. And hey guys, I'd really like to thank Hoogies of Yarra Glen for supplying both the Bahco and the Felco electric secateurs for the purpose of this comparison. If you live in the Yarra Valley or in the east of Melbourne and you're after really good advice, Hoogies of Yarra Glen, fantastic family company. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this review and it's given you some insight into the amazing tools that are available, not only for the hobby farmer, but for the professional alike. If you've got a tool you want reviewed, get in touch through the website. One